I cannot hear you. Can the chat hear you? It's not a glitch, it's just my face.
Can you hear us?
Can you hear us now or?
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. Hello, everyone.
Should we wait a minute or two?
Yep, I think that we can wait like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yep, the player is muted by default, but that's because of the browser itself. So it's not as easy to make the player to be autoplay and unmuted at the same time.
Yeah, but at least it like show up muted really big, like in front of the video, so
I added this today.
very nice. What is a known page in this case? Is it like hard coded in the browser? That's what a known page is?
Well, I think by known page you mean a page where the player can be set to autoplay and unmuted at the same time.
Somebody wrote in the chat that autoplay and unmuted is only allowed for known pages. So I'm wondering, what is a known page?
So I think that a known page is something that is already cached in your web browser, and you can also have autoplay and unmuted when you interact with a website. So, for example, when you have a join screen and you click a button, then there is some interaction and player can be unmuted and autoplay. But here we have just a single screen, so that's not possible.
Got it, thank you.
Okay, so starting or 2 minutes more.
Let's give maybe 2 minutes, as
Okay.
I can see that people are still joining.
Okay, 5 minutes is a good time to let everyone join.
Yeah, you don't need Twitch. That's right.
Also, you can build it yourself if you join, I think, the third day of Elixir Swim Week. You will see how.
Yeah. On Wednesday, actually. On
Wednesday, yeah,
Yep,
so third day.
Yep. I hope that Chris will show you how to build a similar app. Dobry wieczór. So the machine we are running on is 32 cores, 64 threads, and we have 10 gigabits connection link.
It's two Raspberry Pis.
Okay, while Firefox and Safari should be supported, I think that the best experience you will get with Google Chrome or Chromium, as that's what we are testing on our daily basis. Yep, Firefox works fine. Nice. Okay, so I don't know. Maybe we can start. Actually, it's
Yeah.
almost 5 past 7.
Okay, I will make the intro a little bit longer to just let everyone join. But hi everyone, welcome to Elixir Stream Week. This is actually the first time we are doing this, and we hope that it will turn out fine. My name is Carolina. I have Michał here with me, and we are from Software Mansion, the company that organizes Elixir Stream Week. And basically, what is Elixir Stream Week? So we invited 5 top Elixir experts, and we asked them to do each a broadcast on the topic of their choice using Elixir software, so Elixir WebRTC. And like I said, we are doing it for the first time, so we hope that everything will be fine. But if you have some feedback, you notice some bugs or anything, you can just let us know in the feedback form. It is linked below in the description that you can see. And yeah, when it comes to the basic info, I think that's it. I will also tell you a little bit about Software Mansion. So we are actually a software agency, and we are doing all things connected to Elixir, multimedia, also some things connected to React Native. We are core contributors to React Native, and we are very passionate about community building. We are organizing 2 conferences, some meetups, and things like, for example, Elixir Stream Week. And yeah, like I said, we are using Elixir WebRTC today, and Michał actually created it, so he will tell you a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I can see so many messages on the chat about
Don't look at the
glitches. So I am not sure. Maybe that's because we are recording on the same MacBook that we are also streaming here. Maybe after we disconnect and Jose will stay, the situation will be better. I will also take a look at this after we disconnect. So 2 words about Elixir WebRTC. As you can see, we are load testing it, and we are trying to show what types of application you can build with Elixir WebRTC. This one is entirely written in Elixir with Phoenix framework. So everything in pure Elixir. If you want to know more, you can of course visit our website, and I think that's mostly it. If you have any questions, you can join us on our Discord. Everything is in the stream description. And yep, I think that's all. So today, as Karina mentioned, we have Jose, our first streamer, and Jose will talk about changes in Elixir 1.18. I can see another Jose on the chat, but the real Jose will have a red nickname and the special icon on the chat.
It's me on both. Don't worry. So far.
Okay, guys. So Jose, the screen is yours, and have fun.
Thank you.
All right, so let's do this. I'm going to turn off the stream because otherwise it will be rough. So hold on just a second. Let me. All right, so I hope you can see me. If you cannot see me, I cannot see the chat. So, GG. All right, so let's do this. So this talk is about what is new in Elixir 1.18. We release every 6 months, so the next version should be around November next month, December. So it's coming really soon. And like I think for I don't know, like 2 releases ago, I said something like, "Oh, this is our most boring Elixir release ever. And Elixir releases, they have kind of been uh, mostly like improving things, making the compiler more performant for quite some time. But for this one, it is really like the biggest Elixir release in a really long time. Probably compared to adding Elixir releases back then, several years ago. And it's not that we planned to do that, it was just a coincidence of several things happening, which is going to be the topic of the talk today. So yeah, so let's get started. Let me just finish setting some things up here on my end. Great. So we're going to talk about type system. We have some exciting news on this front. We are going to talk about language server updates. So these right here, it's two of probably like the most popular topics in the community, where the community is asking for updates. It's exciting to hear about changes. We're also going to talk about JSON support, XUnit improvements, and mixed format migrate. So let's do this. So type system updates. You are probably aware that we have been working on a type system for Elixir. I don't remember, I think it was 2 years ago, almost 2 years and a half ago, we announced there is a research and development project of a type system for Elixir. Guillaume, Professor Castanha, and myself, we have been involved in this project. The team is growing. Now we have a new PhD student like Shujin working on particular topics. But the work I'm going to present today, we have been the three involved. And we've published the paper, so we've published more than one paper, but if for the Elixir community, a paper that is more accessible, it's the design principles of the Elixir type system. It's going to have a little bit of like, I am one of the authors of the paper, and there are parts of the paper that I do not understand, so there is like a rough in the middle there, a little bit rough of like type theory. If you do not have like a type theory background, you're not going to get it. Like I don't fully get it, but most of it should be accessible for the Elixir community and give like a very good general direction of where we want the type system to go, the trade-offs that we have done so far. And in a nutshell, what the paper is saying is that we are building a sound, gradual, set theoretic type system. So what does this mean? Sound means that if the type system runs through your code, so the type system is being integrated into the Elixir compiler. So when the type system goes through your code and it says, this variable is going to be an integer, at runtime, it's going to be an integer, right? It's not going to happen that the type system is going to say, hey, this variable is an integer. And then when you run the code, it's a Boolean, right? That cannot happen. It's a sound type system. And it's also gradual because it has a dynamic type. And the dynamic type is something that allows us to say, look, I am not exactly sure what is going to be the type here. I know it's like going to be an integer or a float. I am not sure, so I'm going to say it's dynamic, and I know for sure at runtime, right? Because at runtime, when you're executing a function, it's going to be one or the other, right? It cannot be both. Then it's a set theoretic because our foundation, the foundation for the Elixir type system, is built on top of basic set operations like union, intersection, and negation. And I think this is something that is really positive, because if we can talk about types and discuss types, explain types from the point of view of set theory, which is something that we learn early on, right, in school, I think that can be a really net positive for having a type system that feels understandable and approachable. And in about 15 months ago, we announced that the type system was moving from research into development. And Elixir 1.17, the previous release, which we released in May this year, is the first Elixir release that actually introduced the type system work into the compiler, right? So we already have done that. But Elixir 1.17 was very limited on what it did. Elixir 1.17 performs inference and gradual type checking of binaries and maps. It did a bit more, but in a nutshell, that's kind of like the the interesting parts that it was doing. So for example, if you assign something to the user struct and you access a field in the struct that does not exist, now we can emit a warning at compile time. Hey, like this field does not exist. Another example, like imagine you have this code, right? So this is a module and there is a function here, and you're saying, look, this function is expecting a binary. The first byte of this binary is going to be an integer. The other 8 bytes are going to be a float. So what you are doing here is that you are trying to assign something as an integer and as a float to the variable x, which is obviously like this pattern is never going to match because of that, because we want x to be an integer and a float at the same time. And in Elixir 1.17, you would get like this warning from the type system saying, hey, there are incompatible types assigned to x, right? It cannot be an integer and a float at the same time, right? So we print like the diagnostic with information. So really nice error messages, which is something that we have also like really been focusing on to have really good error messages from the beginning. And that's exactly what we got here. So Elixir 1.18 is adding more features on top of this. And Elixir 1.18 is going to perform inference and gradual type checking. Wait, I forgot to update this slide. This is the same as the previous one. But let's move forward, right? So what Elixir 1.18 I think I just forgot to remove it. So what Elixir 1.18 is going to bring to the table, okay? It's going to bring type support for tuples, lists, and functions. So again, before we were doing like integer, floats, binaries, and maps, but we did not support tuple, lists, and functions. So the type system now understands those things, which means that, for example, if you have a 2-element tuple and you try to access like the third element, now you're going to have a warning, right? If you try to pattern match a 3-element tuple on a 2-element tuple, you're going to get a warning as well. So again, more and more features we are adding to the type system. We are also adding type inference of patterns, type checking of local and remote function calls, and invalid branch detection in case, with, and cond. So it looks like a lot, and the best way for us to show these features working is to actually see some code, okay? So imagine that you have this code, all right? Very simple code. We have a module, a function that is expecting a tuple, that we are pattern matching on the tuple. It's very simple, just to show the warnings that we get, right? So it's saying, oh, X is a tuple with 2 elements. What happens if I try to access the third element, since tuples, they are 0 indexed? So, now we are going to get out-of-range tuple access at index 2 in expression, right? The given type does not have the given index, where X was given, so again, we get a typing report, a typing violation, right? Another example of what we are going to see in Elixir 1.18. So, imagine this code now, okay? Imagine that we have a user module that defines a struct, and then there is a function called drive in this user module, okay? So a little bit more complex code, okay? Because the examples so far have been really, really simple. So let's see something more complex. So we have a function called drive that has 2 clauses, right? The first clause receives a user struct. It receives some car choices. And then we say, look, if the age of the user is more than 18 and the car that the user prefers to drive is in the car choices, we return OK and car, so we return a 2-element tuple. Otherwise, we are going to return error no choice. We gave some choice to the user is not interested in driving those choices, so there is no valid choice, right? And then we have a clause at the bottom, which is and if the user does not have the relevant age, right, because it does not match the previous clause, we say that the user is not allowed to drive, right? So in a nutshell, we know, looking at this function, we know that it can return a OK tuple with a car, right? And we don't quite know what the car is, right? But it can return an OK tuple. It can return a error tuple saying no choice, and it can return a error tuple saying not allowed, right? With Elixir 1.18, and then so that we have that code defined, and now imagine that we are calling that code like this. We are saying, look, in Elixir 1.18, we are calling the code saying car choices is an empty list, and we are calling user drive, passing a car as first argument. So this is a obvious typing error, right? Because the first argument of the drive function is a user struct. but we are passing by mistake. We're just writing the code, or we just refactored, like something happened, and the code is passing a car as argument, right? And not only that, right? When we are pattern matching, we are pattern matching on the OK tuple, which looks good, but we are pattern matching on the error atom, right? So here again, we return two element tuples, right? We don't return atoms. So there are two bugs in here, right? So one, we are passing an invalid argument, and we are expecting a return type, right, in error that does not really happen, right? So in 1.18, we are going to get this warning. So it's going to say, look, I am giving invalid arguments to user drive, right? I'm passing like a car struct and an empty list, but user drive expected a user struct and a dynamic, something that it really doesn't know about because the pattern that we had there did not have enough information, right? But basically, without writing any type of notation, without making any change to the code, the type system was like, wait, there's something wrong here, right? This is not going to work. This is going to fail. Okay, I'm getting some. I'm just going to finish this section. And then we're going to get another warning for the case because we're pattern matching on the error atom, right? And the error atom it's not a valid return type of the function, right? So it's saying, look, the following expression was given to case, which has the following type, an OK tuple or error tuples, and none of those things they are going to match the error type, right? So again, the type system was able to find both bugs. All right, so I'm going to restart the stream just so it solves any pending issues. I'll be right back. Should I repeat the... Okay, I'm not back. Just 1 second. All right, can you hear me? I guess what I had to do? Restart the browser, and it worked. Uh, Manual supervisor right here, but after I restarted everything, it worked. Share screen, make me. No, all right. So let's go back to the presentation. So I do have a question. Um, is 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 the audio good? Because I changed I changed the audio recorder kind of thing because I actually remember when I was twitching. Well, I can show you. Hold on just a second. So when I use Twitch, the crackling, the audio crackling would also happen on Twitch. And it was always like I had to change something here in the microphone between 48 and 96, and I never remember which one it is. But it should be good now. I changed the microphone source. Um, all right. So I'm just going to go ahead, right? So I assume that everybody can hear me. Everybody can. Right. So, quick question. Could you understand everything that I was saying, or was the audio not good enough and you want me to repeat a little bit? Okay, that was too much feedback. Hold on, let me read this. uh, okay, all good. Good enough. Please start over. No need to repeat. Okay, I'm just going to show the error messages because I'm very proud about them, and then we'll continue from that. All right. Okay, let's do this. So I think this will be fine. All right. So imagine that you have this code, right? I'm not going to go over the code all over again. But basically, what we need to know from this code is that it expects a user struct as first argument, and it returns OK tuples or error tuples. So if I call this code like this, right? This code that we wrote that is calling that code has two bugs, right? We are passing an argument that is surely not valid, right? And we are expecting an error atom as return type, which is not a valid return type of that function. So in Elixir 1.18, we'll get both warnings about this. So it's going to say, look, you are calling user drive passing a car, but a car is not a valid argument to user drive. It's actually expecting a user struct. And it's also going to say, hey, like there's this clause on the case, the second clause on the case that is expecting a error atom, but the expression user drive that you're calling here does not return this type, right? It returns an OK tuple or an error tuple, but not that type, right? It's never going to match the error. So this is a really nice example of like, well, you didn't have to change anything in the code and now the type system as we move forward and we understand more of what is happening in your code without making any changes, we can actually give you feedback. Okay. So when we are talking, and like this is really nice, I'm really excited to have those features be part of the next release, but it's still like just small steps on a really long journey, right? So remember when we were talking about the type system, uh, we set three major milestones, right? Type inference from patterns and guards, type aliases and type instruct. So the next step is, look, we want to allow you to. So the goal is the first step. Let me roll back a little bit. The goal of this step is what we are seeing here. We are going to make the type system smarter. We are going to have good error messages, right? We are going to make sure that the performance is good. We are going to show you errors without you changing a single line of code. That's the goal of this milestone. If you are happy with that, next step is to define, to allow you to finally add some type of annotations. You will actually be able to annotate your code. And the first thing you're going to annotate is structs, right? So you're going to allow you to define your own types and to type your structs. That's the first thing. And then finally, at the end, we'll be able to type functions, type behaviors, and type protocols, the third major milestone. So type inference from patterns and guards, right? So that's the milestone that we are right now, right? And So what we are achieving with this release is that we have precise support for all data types, right? So we have added tuples, lists, and functions. We added type inference of patterns, and we are adding type checking across local and remote calls. That's why when we call user drive with the wrong arguments and we match on the wrong return types, right? That's why we are getting warnings now. But we don't do type inference of guards yet, okay? So if you're pattern matching on a struct, right, we know that information. But if you say, oh, I have a variable x when x is an integer, right, we are not going to infer that type now. Guards is going to come in the next release, 1.19. And again, you don't have to change your code, okay, to get those benefits. We are getting there. Like, be patient, and eventually you'll be getting as much information as you want. The goal is that you should not change your code or try to do things to your code to get benefits for now. We'll get there, right? And then finally, we'll do type checking of all language constructs, because we don't type check all language constructs yet. So when there is a construct that we don't know the types yet, it's like a map update. We just say, oh, okay, it's going to return dynamic. So that's why I say, like, it's a gradual type system, right? Like, we are gradually implementing the gradual type system into the language. And of course, like, this work, which has been happening for almost 3 years at this point, is only possible because it's a partnership between the CNRS, which is the largest research institution in Europe and remote, and it is sponsored by Fresha, Starfish, and Dashbit. So thank you, everybody, for making this possible. The next feature I want to talk about is language server updates. So 2 months ago, we announced an official Elixir language server team, right, to work on the code intelligence infrastructure to be used across tools and editors in the Elixir community with Jonathan, Łukasz, Mitch, and Steve, right? So Jonathan from Livebook, Łukasz from the Elixir language server, Mitch from NextLS, and Steve from Lexical LS. And the goal is to start over with the strengths of all the 3 editors that we have right now, right? So we are using Lexical as a stable foundation. We are bringing the features from Elixir LS since it is the most complete implementation, and also building on top of the interface and packaging infrastructure built by NextLS. So we are bringing the best parts of each. And in Elixir 1.18, we are already having improvements related to the language server performance. Because here's the thing. When you use a language server in your project today, your language server has its own build directory, which means that your code is compiled like once for development. Like, if you're using like Phoenix Paycheck server, the code is compiled once for the Phoenix Paycheck server, right? And then the code is compiled again for our editor, right? So it's like double amount of work happening there, right? And that, of course, means like more resources being allocated to compilation, right? Duplicate work and so on. And the other thing that language servers they have to do when they boot up is that they need to go through your modules, through your dependencies, and collect metadata, right? And the metadata comes from multiple places. It can come from the bin file, it can come from the AST, it can come from source. So our goal that we have with Elixir 1.18 is to remove like this double compilation that we have and streamline this collection of metadata. So we want to make it so a language server does not need to look at 3 different places and parse different things to get the information that it wants to show to you. So in order to do that, we introduce a mixed compile operating system locking. So what that means is that now, if you have like, imagine that you run mixed compile on a shell, and then at the same time, that you do mix compile, there comes a Phoenix request in the code reloader and try to compile that thing again, right? They would race each other, but now we have a lock. Furthermore, we added, because now, if there are 2 things trying to compile at the same time, only one of them succeeds. We also add this idea called mixed compilation listeners. And what you do in a mixed compilation listener is that if this process is compiling, you can actually wait for what that process is doing and hear that. So like, oh, I can, that other operating system process, this is operating system process, okay? Oh, that other operating system process compiles some code. So I can know like, okay, I have to reload some modules. The language server can say, oh, I see, I have to reload some metadata, and it doesn't have to keep its own compilation environment. And we're also improving the metadata, and we are storing metadata directly in the bin files. So the language server needs to do less work when it boots, right? So this is all about improving the performance of what the language server needs to do in order to be up to date with your project. I'm going to do another pause here just to check how everyone is doing before I move forward. So give me a second. All right. So okay, fantastic. Yeah. All right. So it's good. So I will continue. Will the language server use dev or test env, or will that be configurable? Uh, I believe it's going to be dev by default, but it can be configurable. Or maybe it should be test because it also has to do IntelliSense for test. I don't know. That's a very good question. It's a question for, I mean, what it does today, right? Today it has to pick an environment as well. Uh, but like this is only representing the updates from the Elixir side when it comes to the language server. Like if you start to get too much specific into language server questions, then you have to ask the language server team. Um, are those mixed compilation hooks available for macros? How are they going to be used? Not for macros, right? Because you can't, like, how you're going to listen to the compilation, how the compilation is happening, like that's going to become like a lock issue. But we have a public API for mixed listeners. So if you want to listen to this compilation, there is a public API for that. And we even use this. So Jonathan, he sent a pull request today for IEX because now you can turn on auto reload on IEX. So as soon as some other process compiles the code, your IEX on this shell will automatically pick it up and work for you, right? And this is very easy to do now because we have those listeners. So there is a public API for this. All right. Okay, so save our questions. I'll go back to the presentation, and then we can do Q&A for hours. Because I assume you also had questions about the type system, and I lost all of them. So just save them, because otherwise I'll have to scroll forever, right? Yeah, exhaustiveness checking is going to come in the future, not right now. But those are all things that we can do in case. We can do exhaustiveness checking, we can do redundancy checking. The paper talks about this, but not for this release. It requires more work for that to happen. All right. All right, let's go back to this. Hold on. Transition. All right, so built-in JSON. So the other thing is that coming this release is, hopefully coming this release because it's not in main yet, is built-in JSON support. So Erlang OTP 27 added JSON to treat the standard library. And our goal is simply to bring this JSON library in Erlang to Elixir. We are going to backport the module so if in case you're running earlier OTP versions, that also works. But it's going to be a wrapper around the Erlang functionality. We often say don't do wrappers just for the wrapper's sake, but in this case, there are some benefits that we hope to gain by doing a wrapper, and we're going to talk about them soon. So there's going to be a new JSON module built around Erlang's JSON module, right? With some changes. We want to handle null as new, right? So I believe it parses as the null atom in Erlang, but we want to convert it to Elixir new. We also want to have a built-in JSON encoder protocol, right? So that's why we are wrapping, right? We have to change how we represent new. We also want to support built-in protocols by default, so you can tell how things are encoded to JSON in your own structs, right? But overall, customization and options, they are going to be the same as Erlang's. Something else that we want to do with this work is to remain compatible, not fully compatible, but have a straightforward compatibility layer with the JSON package, which is the most used package for JSON encoding in Elixir, right? So the code, encode, and encode trial data is going to behave the same. The code bank, code trial data, they are going to be there. They're going to behave the same. And also, if you are deriving protocols, right, we are going to have derived JSON encoders. So you just swap the module name and you should be good, right? So if your project has like a very lightweight use of JSON, migration should be straightforward, right? That's the goal here. And that's it. Not much to say here. JSON built-in, right? Something else that we are adding with this release, we have two very exciting XUnit improvements. So the first one is that we are adding parameterized tests, okay? And here is a code example of exactly how to use parameterized tests. So Elixir has this module called registry, which is like a local, decentralized, scalable registry implemented in Elixir, right? Local to the current node. And this registry, it changes, you can partition it. So you can partition it over multiple cores. And the implementation changes depending if you're using one core or 8 cores. So from the testing point of view, we want to make sure that everything works the same, right? Regardless if there is one core, one partition, or 8 partitions. So now in Elixir 1.18, that's very easy. You just say, look, I want to parameterize this test module, and you pass a list of maps. And each of those maps, there are going to be different configurations that is going to be available in your setup and in your task. So for example, what I can do is that in my setup, I'm going to read now the partitions key that we set up in the parameterized key. And from there, we can derive the name, we can configure the partitions, and so on, right? So that's it. And now what's going to happen is that when Elixir runs the task, right, it's going to run the task, like the test module twice, right? One for partitions equals 1, second time for partitions equals 8. And what is really cool about this is that if your test module is async true, the parameterized tests, they will also run concurrently, okay? So this is really nice, right? That we are getting the concurrency between the different parameters, right? So one of the questions that someone probably already asked is that, real parameter, like, can I parameterize only a describe or a test? No, these parameterized whole modules on purpose because we want to be able to run the modules concurrently as well, right? And the tests, they do not run concurrently. We just run modules concurrently. There is a project, maybe from Tyler, that allows you to parameterize describes. So if you want to parameterize describe, you can reach out to that project, which has a bunch of other features. But if you want to parameterize the whole module, you can do this, right? You can also define multiple modules if you want and parameterize all of them, right? But overall, parameterizing whole modules is in Elixir 1.18. Something else that we added is the support for test groups. So you can define, so, Elixir, we can run our tests concurrently. But in order to run tests concurrently, they cannot depend on shared state. Like two different test files cannot depend on the same shared state. So what happens is that, maybe you have some tests that depend on Cassandra, and maybe you have some tests that depend on Redis, right? And the tests that depend on Redis and the tests that depend on Cassandra, they don't share any state with each other, but we cannot run any of them concurrently, right? Because a group within the Redis tests, right, they cannot run concurrently. And the group of Cassandra tests, they cannot run concurrently. So we end up setting async false to those tests, okay? So the idea with the test group is that so XUnit allows tests to run concurrently via async true, but concurrent tests must not share state between them. The idea with the test groups is that I can say, look, all those tests that use Redis, right, they belong to the Redis group. And all those tests that use Cassandra, they belong to the Cassandra group, okay? Which means that now when we run the tasks in the same group do not run concurrently, but tasks from different groups do run concurrently, right? So now you can set those tasks, right, to run concurrently, which is pretty cool and can be a really big boost for large projects and large test suites. And finally, the last change I want to talk about for today is that we are adding the mixed format migrate. And the idea is that we have been deprecating some features in Elixir and over time, right? And then you usually have to go and fix it by hand. So the idea of mixed format migrate is to allow easy fixing of the deprecations that we add to Elixir itself. So for example, it allows us basically to rewrite deprecated code. So, for example, converting from a single quote has been deprecated in Elixir, right? Now you have to use the sigil and be explicit about it, right? And then mixed format migrate is going to do that automatically for you. And what is really cool about this is that there are some things that we haven't been wanting to deprecate for a while, but we never did because that would push so much churn to the community that we're like, nah, not worth it. But since we can automate that now, we can make those things become a reality. So for example, unless is going to be deprecated in Elixir 1.18, and you can just I believe it's self-deprecated only. But you run migrate, it's going to automatically rewrite all your unless to if, and you don't have to do any work. The caveat here is that the reason why we have a explicit flag for migrate is because um, it may, in some very rare cases, like because it's changing the AST, it may, in some very rare cases, rewrite your code into a way that is incompatible, that no longer works, right? So whenever you run migrate, like make sure to like run the test, have the whole build, and get feedback from that. But most of it should be automated with no caveats. And that's all I had to share for today. So I'll come back to the chat and we can do a Q&A. And transition. All right. Yeah, and the the Adobe Style maintainers that were involved as well, giving feedback. There's still like an open question if like how much can we open this to be extensible? We haven't thought much about that. So I think we still need to use things like Styler. I know Zach, who is in the chat, he's working on similar tools for Igniter. So those tools are still going to be important. Right now, our focus is to automate things that are happening in Elixir, deprecations that are happening in Elixir. But I am never a big fan of having a tool that works only on Elixir, right? I always say like no cheating. We should not have a tool that is like specific to Elixir and nobody else the community cannot use it. So I think at some point we'll try to discuss ways to extend it, but right now we're not focused on that. About the tasks, no, you cannot have groups. It's a single group, right? So if you have tasks that use both like Cassandra and Redis, then you need to have a single group, or you have three distinct groups, right? Like no, you need to have a single group, right? Do not and put everything in there, right? Because otherwise I have to solve like those graphs. Oh, Redis can run together with this, but not together with that. Maybe we can add it in the future, but it starts becoming a more complex problem. Uh, uh, feel free to ask questions, okay? So somebody asked about recommendations with books and online tutorials. I recommend the chat to drop their suggestions for that question. Is the extra type checking already merged in 1.18 dev? Partially, yes. But it's still work in progress. But I was able to. The hard part of the type checking thing was to do the full type inference of patterns. But that's already merged. Everything else is like it's it's cake compared to that. I had to implement the inference 3 times. The third time worked, the other times it did not work. Um, will Elixir bring doc for private functions? As does Erlang since a short while. I don't know. It's uh, there's a discussion to to happen on this topic, but I'm not ready to load that into my brain. I don't have enough information loaded. So maybe we can discuss it some other day. But right now, it will be hard. Will records be support a type system? So records should work, right? In the sense that records, they are just macros that become tuples. So they should just work. Maybe the typing, maybe when you get an error, it's not going to be the best of errors. But macros, they are like syntax sugar, right? They are literally macros. So records, they are macros. So it should be fine in general. Um, The new LSP is not going to be distributed as part of Elixir release. It's a separate project from Elixir. Our goal is to continue providing better tools and better abstractions, better modules for not only the language server, right, but for the whole community, right? So when we see the language server doing something, they're like, look, we can do this better in Elixir, or we can do it in Elixir because, so for example, the language server uses private APIs. So it's not that we can do a better job than them. It's just like, look, does Elixir have actually more information to do this in a way that they do not have to use private APIs and we can expose something? That's what we want to do, right? And the benefit is that when we do that, it's going to be available for everybody, right? But the whole language server implementation and distribution is going to be separate. So let me scroll up. Wait, I cannot. Wait, hold on. About migrations. Oh, the chat, it starts disappearing. Oh, stop typing. Um, Somebody asked about more migrations. I know we have something about the pipe operator that we want to do, but we don't want to use this as an excuse to like, oh, let's deprecate everything, right? But we are going to do it, but we're not going to like turn like it to to like 100, right? Um, can we keep using the analyzer alongside the new type system? Yes, for now, yes. You're going to use both, but at some point when we introduce like type signatures, the dialyzer annotations, they are going to be discouraged. Uh, we have some progress on how we could use the existing type annotations within the new type system, but I'm still thinking that it's going to be more trouble than worth it for the Elixir case, right? Because our type signatures, the type specs that we have today, they are not checked, right? Most of the times they are imprecise, and I think just rely on them. I think this is a good opportunity to say like, look, let's do it properly. Let me define the proper signature with the type system, rather than just accept what we have today with its words. Uh, Private modules are going. It can be a feature when we are advanced with the type system. Uh, but one of the things, like I thought, I briefly mentioned we want to have like type structs, and one of the things that I want to do with type structs is like, for example, to have private struct fields, deprecated struct fields. So it's going to be a good place for us to start like battle testing those things out. No, the specs are not going to be more tightly integrated into definitions in the future. And the new annotations, they're going to be separate as well. And I think this is really important. It's really important because a type declaration, a type signature is a contract, is what that function expects and receives. When you merge them together, you start mixing API definition with implementation. So it will be very easy for you to be like, hey, I remove a whole clause, which means that you're breaking the contract, right? You're no longer accepting those arguments, right? Accidentally, and then you push breaking changes. So I think in our particular case, especially because we already have other features like patterns and guards, having them as separate things, it's very important. It's very, very good. Uh, no, I mean, we already have runtime types, right? But I think your question is, can I access the types at runtime? And at the moment, not really. I mean, you can access, like, in the sense, like, you can do is atom, and you're going to know the type, right? So you can access the types at runtime. But if you want to say, what was the type annotation, or, you know, so okay. So I think, like, at runtime, of course, we have that already, right? That's part of the runtime, like that's part of the Erlang virtual machine. But if you're like, look, I want to get the signature, maybe in a macro to generate code or something like that, perhaps that makes a bit more sense. And maybe that's going to be a feature, but it's not it's not in our plan right now. Sorry about the throat. Will the new IX enhancement solve the problem Lifebook will report the module has been compiled and running recompile in the attached IX repo? I think it will, and I think it already does today. Why is the new LSP called Expert? Not for me to answer, but I like the name. I like the name. We only store 200, 300 messages in the chat. So this is crazy because I'm being pushed. All right. What else can I see this? I'm scrolling a bit more. I already answered about migrate. I'm going for the chat, so hold on. Yeah, so somebody says, like, type and spec is good syntax flow, just need to be adapted to the new type system, right? It I kind of disagree, honestly, that it's good syntax. I think it's very verbose. You having to repeat the function name that is right below it. Like, it's my fault, right? Like, I I designed it. I could have done changes, but I think there are, like, legit improvements that we can do to that syntax, and that's another reason for introducing a new one. Uh, is there a way we can make the type system warning should be errors? Yes, warning as errors is going to work. No, the token does not have a name, and it is currently broken. So eventually it will be fixed. Ask me in the next year's stream, and it's probably going to be broken still, but uh, how powerful the type system will really be, it's really early to answer. I mean, we know a lot of what we can type and what we can do, but when it comes to working with Vecto, it's still quite ahead of what we are going to do. I don't rule out, like, Acto have to change some things, right, to make it so the types become more visible. But it's still an open question, and there's still a lot that we need to do until we get to that point. Um, how does a type checker relate to the Elixir compiler? Because it works function by function across modules. Um, So the type checker runs after all modules have been compiled, so it does have the full visibility of the project and all the types, right? But when we do the inference, it's something that I did not talk in the presentation. When we do the inference, we consider only things in the current module. We do not consider external modules. And that's fine, because our goal with inference is to find obvious errors, is not to find, like, the precise information, which would be very expensive for us to do because our type system is very expressive. So we just want to find obvious errors. So inference per module, type checking for the whole system. Would future work on the type system or adjacent bringing something to ensure behaviors are implemented? Yeah, so what we can do today, like the theory that we have today for the type system, is already capable of checking, like, hey, am I implementing this callback correctly, right? The theory that we have will be able to do that, so we can implement. But what we want to do is to bring it to the next level. It's like we want to say, hey, I am passing a module as argument that should implement this behavior. So how can we do that? Hey, I am passing I am calling a John server function that when I do that, so I have a PID that has I have a PID that implements this behavior, right? Because you can have a PID can be kind of associated to a behavior, right? Like a John server. So when I automatically call that PID, I want to be able to infer. So there's a lot of work we can do with behaviors. Like what we do today with dialyze, we can 100% do it. The question is about doing more. We want to do more. You should be able to meta program in the type system. Yes, that's yeah. As everything else in Elixir. Uh, Type system. Thank you, Tony Stark. Maybe mixed format migrate to fix the token. I wish. Can we opt out the type system? No. No, we wanted. If we do it, we want. Why do I have an earphone? I'm not listening to anything. This is unnecessary. Uh, the no, it's you cannot opt out of it. Like yes, I mean you can. I mean today the type system is going to find things that are 100% wrong, right? So it doesn't make sense to opt out of it. And then if you don't want to use a type system, don't write type annotations, right? So you can opt out in a way, right? But the bugs we find today should be 100% valid, so you wouldn't want to opt out of that, right? Maybe for performance, but you should not want to opt out for performance. You want to make it fast, you want to make it good, right? So yeah, yeah. Exhaustiveness checks aren't in 1.8, but will come in the future. Uh, Is the type system rich enough to improve beam performance? No, not right now. Maybe in the future this could become a conversation, but right now it's unrelated. Performance is not a goal. It may be a goal in the future, but not right now. Mm, yeah, Parker said types are important for adoption, and it may be the case, but I think something that needs to be said is like it may not also change adoption at all. So I'm not doing the types work for adoption, right? It's like, you know, I never had the road, right? So why change for it, right? It's not something that I am like necessarily chasing, right? Like, oh, we have to get it's good. Like we want to do things to improve adoption, but we don't want to design the language or to add such a big feature like type system for adoption, right? We want to do that because we think it's right. It's the right way to go about it, right? The reason I'm adding a type system is not because people that are not Elixir developers ask for it. It's because the Elixir community asked for it, right? It was a point where it was the for sure the majority of requested feature, right? So I was like, okay, let's research this, right? It's not like let's add one, right? That's not the goal. It's like, can we have an actual good type system that makes sense with Elixir, right? So if that's true, then we're going to have it. And then maybe that increases adoption, but maybe it doesn't. And that's fine, right? Because it should be the thing that we wanted. No, there are no performance issues with the type checking. It takes less than 1 millisecond per module. It's on my machine. So um, the most challenging feature to implement so far in the type system has been the type inference of patterns. And I think it's going to be the hardest so far. But it's worth saying that the type system implementing the type system, I want to do like some streams at some point because it's actually the way that the etc types work. Implementing the type system is not actually hard. It's basically using a data structure. So we have this data structure which represents the sets of all the types in Elixir, right? And all I need to do is like, oh, I want to see, like, I'm calling a function. So if I want to see if a function call is valid, I get the type of the argument, the type of the other thing. I compute the intersection, see if the intersection is not empty, or I compute the difference. That's what I need to do. It's like I'm just using a data structure. But this data structure, that's rough to implement. But who is implementing it is Guillaume Duboc, right? So who's the PhD student. And in order to implement this data structure, it's not only hard in terms of like code, but everything in that data structure. So in Elixir, it's in something called module.types.tasker. Everything in there is like mathematically proven to be correct. So so it's like that is rough. Like I have the easy part. Um, so yeah. Um, mm, all right. I'm reading. Regarding the Phoenix and files, you can do whatever you want. Nor Elixir nor Phoenix care. You can name whatever they want. You do you. Um, all right, there's too much happening. I'm trying to catch up. Hold on. What is the theme project future work? Yeah, I'm really excited about like both the type system work, the language server work. I was also very excited about the machine learning things in general as well. Um, and but they are like quieting down, which I think it's good because it's becoming more stable, and hopefully we get to release 1.0. So yeah, is many things I'm excited. Like the things that I'm working on, it's exciting to me because otherwise I wouldn't be working on them. uh, um, no, mix migrate. It's not the right tool for LLM. Mix migrate is going to be very specific to the Elixir needs right now. Is Dasker short for description? I believe it is. I believe it is. Uh, is there any work being done in the interaction between Elixir code types and proof assistance? Um, work being done. It's I know like somebody wrote. I think for TLA plus, you can get some TLA specs, and that's going to generate Elixir code for you that you can go and fill it in. So I know that's a thing. I think Gabriela worked on it, if I remember correctly. I don't know if there is more work happening, but it's I think with the type system is going to bring more attention to this area in general. But yeah, but something that would be interesting. Mm, all right. People discussing about the documentation stuff. Any estimate when the checking of local remote functions will be on GitHub? When it will be pushed? I have been itching to write this code for like weeks at this point, but finding it's like everything is ready in my head. I just need to sit down, and it's like so frustrating because I really want to have the time to sit down and write it all. But yeah, it yeah, I want it to be there soon, especially because I know, you know, people like you are going to go and run Bang and give feedback before release, which is really good. I really want to do it, but yeah, uh, like you're not being more impatient than I'm being impatient, but yeah, um, mm, yeah, yeah, okay. They're going to be all right. I think we are all right. So it seems I scrolled all the way to the end of the chat. Okay. So if I missed the question, feel free to ask again. I'm just going to answer. Is it possible? We have quantization in the latest annex. Quantization, we have quantized types, right? Doing the actual quantization, it's a whole separate story, but it needs to happen at a higher level than annex because the more, like you need, so like Excel would be a good place for that to happen because it has a better understanding of the layers and the ways to connect. Like if you do it at the op level, it's not necessarily the best thing. I'm going to grab some water and be right back. Um, and then we can do like more 10 minutes of questions. Um, Laura support, I believe you need to ask the Axon team. I believe there is a PR for that already. Uh, yeah, one for questions could be good. Oh, by the way, this is open source, right? Isn't that correct? So, you can also run this, debug it, send feature requests, um, send pull requests rather, sorry. Um, do you think we'll get a type? Yes. I mean, we want to. We want to be able to, right? So we have a postdoc student working on those challenges related to behaviors and being able to pass modules at first class. Um, so we are researching. I cannot say if we'll get it or not. Uh, it's don't worry about like you're completely right to ask questions. It's all right. Yeah, it's all right to ask about the doc stuff. No problem. It's just funny, right? That we yeah. It seems that Elixir is perfect for multi agent AI frameworks. Yes, it is. Charlie Holtz, he gave good talks about this at this Elixir Conf in US. The video is not up yet, but the one from last year as well, he gave a good talk on exactly this topic. Let me see if I can. Maybe somebody can put it on the chat, but I wrote down his name, so I want to look for it. Um, all right. Horizontal mode in Livebook, there is an open issue for that. But there's an open issue for an horizontal mode where you have the code and the output side by side. That's going to be a good way. But the nodes mode, I don't believe in programming through nodes kind of thing. It's you know it's it's a great thing to show, but I don't think it's practical for actually writing code. I don't think it helps with you actually writing and maintaining code. Uh, I don't have enough experience with amnesia to have a opinion on it. I think if somebody actually has production experience with amnesia, write a book. I would write a book. Pring, Prag, Prog, or other publishers. Yeah, that's the talk. Building AI apps with Elixir. He's building AI agents in that talk. Yeah, I would so if you know somebody who is using Amnesia in production, I know the WhatsApp team is maybe partner with somebody from maybe they don't use Amnesia anymore. No, I think they do. You know, find somebody like let's write a book together. And I think that would be massive to the community. Uh, I'm Programming for nodes. It's UI elements where you represent the code as nodes and show the connections between them. It's not something that I think is uh, yeah. What else? What else? No, yeah. We do have some features for like dashboards coming in Livebook. There's an open pull request. You can try it out. Um, but yeah. Oh, I have many thoughts on mocking. There is. Let me see if I can find a blog post. Uh, yeah, I found it. Yeah. My thoughts on mocking is that you should not be mocking. That's like a good, very good summary of it. And if you want to mock, you want to be very explicit about it. Right? Uh, yeah, the whole blog post talks about that. Yeah, exactly. Right? And it's funny because like then we release like the mocks library and folks say like, oh, the mocks library is hard to use. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the point, right? Make the things that you should not be doing kind of bureaucratic and very explicit and clear, right? And not easy. Um, yeah, that's also true. Oh, web requests. No, web requests is a whole separate thing. And rack comes, that's a whole separate thing. And that actually there's another blog post of that in our blog, don't we? That talking about how rack does it and how rack allows you to do it at different levels. Yeah, there it is. Let me share it. Do you think Elixir type system will make the hammocks library obsolete? The hammocks library is about type checking the things. Yeah, so it might. Yeah, it might. That's a very good thing. Yeah, it might. Uh, Thoughts on the Elixir adoption? It's I always say that it's not something that like I have to wear like many different hats, right? So like for example, having an Elixir company and working with the community, I have to think a lot about adoption. But with the hat that I'm wearing today, which is like the language maintainer and the language designer, right? That's not my biggest concern, right? And I don't want it to get me misconstrued that I don't think about adoption, right? But it's just like, look, when I'm here and I'm presenting about those features, it's because they are the right for the language, right? And what we can do in general to improve as an adoption, right? That's for the community to answer because it's not going to be a problem that is going to be solved by the Elixir team, right? Or an individual person, right? So in many ways, you are going to have better feedback and understanding on how to improve the Elixir adoption than me, right? I do the things, outside of the Elixir maintainer hat, right? I do the things that I think are good, like to Elixir adoption. So like the Primeagen was on the chat, which we don't know if it was the actual Primeagen or another one. So I'm going to be on the stream with him tomorrow, which is something that is going to bring Elixir to more developers. We write about documentation, we write blog posts, I do a lot of things that are about adoption, right? But when it comes to, but that's my feeling, right, on how I think I can impact adoption, but I don't think my opinion on adoption is going to be more relevant than your opinion. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to say. Um yeah, I think Brian kind of sums it up well as well, right? Yeah, it's yeah. Is there a chance rack becomes included in core? No, I don't. I don't like or trust the community converge argument, right? Because everybody's like, oh, rack is awesome now, right? But 4 years ago, right, everybody would say add Tesla, right? So I don't think I think adding things to core because we want the community to converge is like the wrong solution to the wrong problem, right? Because like right? Like, so when do we converge? Now do we converge? But what if we add, but if we converge 4 years ago, then maybe rack that people seem to prefer today would not be a thing. Or maybe rack would be a thing. And now it will be like, hey, everybody, there is this HTTP client in core, but we don't like it. So you should just use rack, right? So now we have two things anyway, right? So maybe we can have rack and core, right? But it should not be the reason for convergence, right? That is going to be like the wrong reason to do it, right? If we converge, we should converge because we do it as a community, not because I am like we are doing it, right? And basically like coming up with an ultimatum. Sometimes I do the ultimatum, right? Like the type system is going to be one of those things, but it's also because like there is a really big difference in having a type system as part of the language and what it can do as part of the language compared to a separate tool, right? We're not doing it only for convergence. But it's a good question, right? Sometimes I'm like, I give a strong answer, but it's a good question. Hmm, hmm, nice. So about the Elixir Foundation, we already have the Elixir Foundation through the Erlang Ecosystem Foundation, and so everybody who wants to join and help, that's like the place where I'm most active online nowadays is within the Erlang Ecosystem Foundation Slack, right? And I think, and people say like, oh, we could have a specific one for Elixir, right? But remember that Elixir would not exist without Erlang, and I think we have more to gain from continue to work together than setting up something Elixir specific. I still believe that in some places we need to um, stand up on our own. So like when it comes to marketing and adoption, I think that's one of the things where each community is like, okay, we're going to do our own thing because you need to specialize, you need to be specific, you need to go to specific use cases, audiences when we are talking about marketing adoption. But when it comes to many of the other things, especially when it comes to technology, I think being unified has is much better, right? Like now we got unified docs between Erlang and Elixir, which is fantastic, right? Like the instrumentation tooling has been unified since the beginning, which is important, right? Imagine if instrumenting Erlang code bases and Elixir code bases were drastically different. So yeah. Um, yeah. A big pattern in Elixir is the builder patterns, such as plugs, are going to be a good way to make this type safe. That's a very good question, but I can't see anything right now getting in the way of making it type safe. Uh, Mihal has a very good question. Removing repeated compilation work, could we opt into sharing dapps build artifacts between EMs? Setting config for dapps comp time is discouraged anyway. And I think there's an open issue for this. and I think this could be nice and exciting. And even if they had distinct separate ends, that would be fine because today when we compile a dependency, we know exactly the compile time environment that that dependency was compiled with, so we could share it. The reason I didn't do it is because I don't remember. Is because in my experience, the compilation time of dependencies is never a really big issue. But maybe that's an issue that people are having in the project. So like jump into the issue that we have today. If you can't find, ping me. I know you have my email. Um, and let us know like oh, this would be massive for us because yeah. Uh, I joined a bit late. Is there progress on the documentation across project modules? Yes, there is progress. The plausible analytics folks, Grusland in particular, they have picked this up, and there's already a pull request for Hex. So I'm hoping we're going to have news really soon about this, and they already built like some prototypes, so it looks like very very exciting. So uh, yeah. Um, yeah, Burrito is awesome. All right, you gotta go. Yeah, I gotta go as well. I went 10 minutes over the time. How is the hand? Still a bit stiff. That's the meme, if you're aware of the meme. But thanks for asking. The hand is. I've I've accepted that my hand arm will never be 100% again. So um, yeah, that's how it's going. It's not as bad as it was, but I do feel pain like almost every day. It's a constant thing, and not because I'm pushing it too much. Like I'm way more like diligent and careful now, but I think it's chronic pain at this point. But yeah. Ta-ta-ta-ta. Ba-ba-ba-ba. Okay. Steve, are you saying it's an issue for the dependencies, right? So I assume it comes up like when you switch branches and things like that, and then somebody updated the thing, and now you go compile everything, and then you compile everything for the other environment, and then you're like, right? Okay. Say yes if that's the case. Okay, I think Felipe is saying it would be big for the YOLO group. Uh, yeah, the build per environment flow is for the whole thing. I think they want the build for environment for dependencies. Yeah, we can take a look at this. Uh, okay, so just to be clear, like Zach, you're saying I hear this complaint every day from my users. We are talking about the dependencies one, right? Let me scroll to the end. No, okay. I don't know. Cross package docs. Okay, good. Wait. All right, so Steve and Felipe, please confirm if what you're talking about. Like, it's an issue. What is the issue? Oh, Steve already confirmed. They have 10 minutes to compile dependencies. And Felipe, are you talking about docs or the compilation? What we can do to help language maintainers? Um, so, like, Elixir has kind of like, there's not a lot of work happening in Elixir itself. The best way you can help is like at this time, like based on the presentation of today, is when the release candidate's out, like try it out, give it a try, and give us feedback. That would be massive. That would be massive. Um, is there a blog post on how Software Mesh has set up the stream week? They yeah, I don't know, but I think there's going to be a talk Or maybe there's not a talk. Anyway, if they don't, they should. Oh yes, Michal said. Okay, he came back later. Um, yeah, it's maybe you can see it, maybe you can't, but it's like I have like kind of a bubble kind of thing here on both. On both, it happened at both. Oh, this one is clear. You can see, right? And yeah, I have on both wrists. It happened on both at the same time, which is very weird. But yeah. Uh, okay. Right. Let's wrap this up. Recompiling dApps. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I have a split keyboard now. I also have like a vertical mouse. This one is from Logitech, which I really, really, really recommend. Right? Because when you have a regular mouse, you're doing this. And this is not a normal hand movement, right? Maybe if you're a DJ, sure, but like, so this is a lot of strain. And before I would use the trackpad, so I would be like this, right, on the trackpad on my notebook, and that just kills your wrist, right? So I did like, if you can take something away from this, I got this split keyboard thing, get a vertical mouse. Like really, like even if your hand is good, like a vertical mouse is so much better than a regular mouse, right? And I know how I sound. Like people would say, "Oh, a mechanical keyboard is much better." No, like you're sure, right? But yeah, get the vertical mouse. It's really really good. This is a Kinesis Freestyle Pro. So it's just like I can show it. It's just like a split, it's literally like a keyboard split on half. So there's like some adaptation getting used to. So like for example, I would reach to the Y key using my left hand, but it's on the right keyboard now, so I had to get used to that. But you get used like really quickly. I know people have like weirder keyboards that there's like a longer learning curve, but the split one is really, it's really quick to get used to it, and it does improve a little bit. A bit pricey, but for us, um, you know, um, yeah. So trackball, yeah. Nice, yeah. Yeah, like the best thing you can do from this whole conversation, I'm finishing, by the way. The best lesson here is not that I talked about, it's actually get a vertical mouse and a split keyboard. It's probably the best thing that you can do for your career. Don't do it too late like me, right? You know, yeah. All right, folks, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you for staying around all this time, asking the questions. Take care. I'm really excited about this release. Really hoping that we can get all those improvements sooner than later for you to try it out. I am impatient to get them in. I just need to be able to sit down and implement the rest of the code. But I'm very excited. All right, have a good rest of the day, and till next time.